What if true courage wasn't a roar, but silence? What if the greatest strength didn't lie in fists, but in the soul that refuses to yield? What if the rarest bravery belonged to those who stand tall, even as the world roars for them to kneel, in a world of shouts and applause, of ego and appearances? Who still dares to say no, without raising their voice, without a stage, without an audience? Most flee the fire. Others try to extinguish it, but few walk straight into it, because there are moments when there will be no promises, no guarantees, no rescues. There will only be the heat of doubt, the weight of choice, and the silence of unwavering conviction. Take a deep breath. Picture yourself there, amid the crowd that bows, and you standing still, not out of pride, but out of principle. That is where true courage is born, not from the strength that shouts, but from the soul that does not bend. There is a flame that does not burn, a flame that blazes within while the world tries to consume everything outside, and it is in that flame that we become unbreakable. So stay until the end. Today, we'll dive into an ancient story, a story where there was no loud resistance, no glorious victories, but there was steadfastness, there was presence, there was faith, even without certainty. Subscribe if you seek self-mastery amid chaos. Here, every story is a mirror for those tired of easy answers, for those searching for a strength that doesn't depend on the world today. We uncover the Stoic message behind courage doesn't shout, it acts the fiery furnace. In distant Babylon, a land of opulence and domination, 3 Hebrew youths bore the weight of exile. Torn from their homeland, their traditions, everything they held sacred: Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. 3 names etched into history's margins, not for how fiercely they fought, but for how firmly they refused to break. Their battle wasn't waged with swords. It was waged against the forgetting of themselves. Nebuchadnezzar, the absolute king, had ordered the construction of a towering golden statue, a symbol of human power, of glory demanding worship, an idol erected not as art, but as proof of control. The command was clear: at the sound of flutes, harps, and every instrument, all subjects of all nations must bow. This wasn't just kneeling before gold, it was a test of total submission. To refuse was, in the empire's eyes, to deny the very value of life. And so the crowd bowed. Dozens, hundreds, thousands, faces pressed to the ground. Men and women bent their knees for survival, for convenience, for fear. All except 3. Amid a sea of complicit silence, 3 silences stood apart, not for their sound, but for their absence. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego remained standing. They raised no fists, they made no protest, they shouted no defiance, they simply stood. Their courage was quiet, solid, unshakable as stone. They knew they'd be seen, knew they'd be reported, knew they were signing their own sentence. Yet, they did not move. Like rocks in a raging river, they were noticed only because they would not bend. The news reached the king. Nebuchadnezzar, conqueror of nations, now saw his authority challenged by 3 exiled youths who dared not to bow. He summoned them. He wanted to hear it for himself. And he made his threat plain. Is it true you refuse to worship my statue? If you do not bow, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. And what God can deliver you from my hands? For most, the world would stop there. The threat of pain, of death, of exile. But they did not flinch. Their reply echoes through centuries, simple, direct, unshaken. If we are thrown into the furnace, our God can deliver us. But even if he does not, we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image you have set up. There it was, the essence of silent courage, the virtue that does not bargain with fear, the faith that doesn't demand salvation to remain faith. This was no challenge to the king. It was a challenge to the very instinct of self-preservation, the maturity of those who had already decided who they were and knew survival wasn't worth the cost of their conscience. The answer enraged Nebuchadnezzar. The furnace was heated 7 times hotter, the flames so fierce they killed the soldiers who threw the youths in. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were bound and cast in without mercy. No ceremony, no last appeal, no chance to repent. This was the end, at least, to those watching. But what happened inside was no cry of despair, no pleading, no begging. What was heard was nothing, and that silence is what unsettles. They did not scream for mercy. They did not justify themselves. They simply fell, and then walked. The king watched from a distance. Then, something made him rise in shock. "Weren't there 3 men we tied up and threw in?" he asked. "Yes, your majesty," they replied. "Then how do I see 4 men unbound, walking in the fire unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods?" The scene seemed impossible. Yet there they were, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, and another divine presence, or a symbol of the strength within those who refused to kneel. It didn't matter. The fact was clear. They stood inside the fire, walking where none should survive. Nebuchadnezzar approached the furnace and called them out. The oppressor's voice now held awe, and they emerged, calmly, before the eyes of advisors, satraps, and governors. The 3 young men stood, untouched. No burns, no singed hair, not even the smell of smoke on them. That was the miracle. Not just the preservation of flesh, but of dignity. They weren't saved from the furnace. They were saved in the furnace. Because the real test wasn't surviving the fire, but not being consumed from within, not crumbling before fear, not trading the soul to save the body. They didn't need fiery speeches to prove their faith. Their stillness spoke for them. The courage that needs no audience. The virtue that endures, even as everything seems to crumble. This isn't the courage of a hero who wins with a sword. It's the courage of ordinary men who choose not to yield, and thus become unbreakable. This story isn't about victory in the usual sense. It's about constancy, about staying true to who you are, even when the world tries to reshape you. It's about the fire that tries to burn what you believe, and what remains when the fire fails. In the end, the lesson stands. The world may heat the furnace, threaten, scream, but there's one thing only you can decide whether to bow or not. And sometimes, all courage requires is to stand, without shouting, without defending, just to keep standing. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did not argue with fate. They did not try to negotiate with the inevitable or reshape reality to fit their expectations. When faced with the furnace, they demanded no signs. They needed no promises. They knew they had no control over the outcome, only over their stance before it. This, perhaps, is one of the highest lessons of Stoic philosophy, the serene understanding that we do not choose what happens, but we always choose our response to it. As Epictetus would say, don't seek for things to happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do, and you will go on well. They did not say, God will deliver us. They said, even if he does not. That phrase carries a quiet power. It is not resignation, it is resolve. Not surrender, it is conviction. They were not anchored in the expectation of rescue. They were anchored in a value that did not depend on results. That is rational courage, not the kind that defies out of pride, but the kind that stands firm out of integrity. Seneca called this preparation for adversity. He wrote, "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity." But what kind of preparation is this? Not physical, not strategic. It is a preparation of the soul, a decision made before the crisis. They were not prepared to defeat the king. They were not prepared to escape death. They were prepared not to betray themselves even if everything was taken from them. This is what Marcus Aurelius would call inner mastery, when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." They had no power over the sentence. They could not stop the furnace, but they could choose not to bow. And that was their victory, a victory without celebration, without fanfare yet, one that echoes to this day like a flame time cannot extinguish. This is the virtue of resistance, not the kind fueled by anger, not the stubbornness that seeks conflict. It is the resistance of maturity, of a soul that has chosen what is right, not because it guarantees reward, but because it carries truth. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were not trying to prove anything. They did not expect admiration. They were not chasing heroism. They simply knew what they could not lose: their integrity, their center, their fidelity to themselves and what they believed. Modern life, like Babylon, still demands that we bow to the idols of fear, of appearances, of social acceptance. But the Stoic spirit, and the spirit of these 3 young men, does not bend, because it understands that there are things fire can consume, and things even the fiercest flames cannot touch. Integrity is one of them. They were not moved by what they could gain. They were moved, or rather, unmoved by what they refused to lose. And that decision, made in silence, with serenity, without promises of victory, is what philosophy calls wisdom, the wisdom of those who know life can take everything except what you refuse to surrender. As the Stoics teach, what matters is not what happens to you, it is what you choose to be, even when the whole world tries to shape you otherwise. Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego chose to be unbreakable, and so, even inside the fire, they were not burned. And you are living in your own invisible prison. Not every cage has bars, not every furnace has visible flames. Sometimes, what consumes you is what no one sees. The waiting that seems endless, the silence screaming inside you while the world moves in noise, the discomfort of being in a place where you must smile while inside you feel yourself fading. Maybe the fire around you is not literal, but the pain is real. You feel the pressure every day to bend, to accept what wounds your principles, to agree with what you don't believe, just to keep a job, a relationship, an image, to stay silent even when your conscience begs to be heard. And so, like those three young men before the golden statue, you find yourself in a crowd of those who bow, and you wonder, do I stand, or do I yield to go unnoticed? How many times have you felt this way? Maybe no one knows the battles you face, the injustice in your family, the subtle humiliations at work, the guilt you carry for not reacting, the fear of losing what little you have if you take a stand. Who has betrayed you? And you still haven't found the courage to forgive. What promises have you made to yourself in silence once that, each day, seemed harder to keep? How often have you held back not from lack of strength, but from fear of being burned by the consequences? And how often has that fear shaped your choices, your words, your identity? These Hebrew youths did not know the end of the story. They had no guarantee of deliverance. They expected no miracle. What they had was clarity. They knew who they were, and that was enough to keep them from bending, even under threat. And do you know who you are when the world demands you be something else? Is the silence that troubles you actually your preparation? Stoic philosophy reminds us that adversity does not break us. It reveals us that discomfort is not punishment, but refinement. That the waiting, the emptiness, the symbolic furnace you're in now may be where your truest courage is forged. Life will place you in furnaces. It will demand choices, and often you will be alone with them, without applause, without certainty, without rescue in sight. But there is a kind of person the world cannot burn, not because they are invulnerable, but because they have made one non-negotiable choice. What matters, matters, even if everything is at stake. Maybe you are at that very point, maybe today. You need to remember that the silent firmness of those three young men was not born in the furnace. It was only revealed there. Fire does not create, it exposes. And what will the fire find inside you? Will you bow before the idol of fear, the need for acceptance, the ease of complacency? Or will you stand even trembling, even uncertain because you know there is something in you that cannot be bargained away? Ask yourself, where in my life am I bending when I should stand firm? What value, what principle, what truth am I sacrificing in the name of survival? What have I stopped being just to avoid discomfort? This is not about being a hero or a martyr. It is about being whole. It is about listening to that inner voice that whispers even when everything around you screams that you were not born to be shaped by fear. Sometimes you will not be saved from the fire, but you can be saved in it, because true liberation is not escaping pain. It is not letting pain take from you what is essential. Remember, your integrity is worth more than any immediate relief. Your soul is priceless, and your courage doesn't need to make noise. It just needs to remain. Courage does not shout. It has no need to. It does not force itself upon others. It asks for no audience. It delivers no fiery speeches, demands no recognition. True courage does not try to convince anyone, because it is already convinced. It simply remains steady, silent, even when the ground shakes, even as the fire draws near, even when all seems lost. The wise man Epictetus said, does not worry about what lies beyond his control. He turns his attention to what he can control, his choices, his virtue, his character. That is why he does not seek to avoid the heat. He does not try to extinguish every flame in the world. He does not spend his life running from crisis to crisis, fleeing pain. No. He seeks something rarer, more valuable, more powerful, to be someone the fire cannot destroy, not because he is made of stone, but because he is made of purpose, of principle, of conviction. You do not need to avoid every fire in life. You only need to be someone who knows what they are unwilling to lose, even when everything is at stake. If this story has stirred something deep within you, if it has awakened a strength that may have lain dormant, consider following this channel. Here, every story is not just a tale, it is a silent compass for the soul. Every character, every challenge, holds up a mirror to your own journey. And every flame, every furnace, every dark night, is only the test of what already burns not outside, but within you. After all, fire does not forge character, it only reveals the material you are already made of. Stand firm, stay whole, even in the face of the fire.